Today is Transgender Day of Remembrance. We're talking about what day it is. You can add that one to the list. This one is a day to memorialize people who've been killed as a result of hatred or fear of transgender people. Yesterday, in several central Newfoundland communities, there were ceremonies marking the event. Our David Newell attended a gathering of about a dozen people in Grand Falls, Windsor, and there he spoke with Jennifer McCreath. She's lived the transition experience and was one of the people organizing the event.
What have you been doing today? Tell us about your day.
It's been an amazing day. It's International Transgender Day of Remembrance, technically tomorrow, but it's evolved to a week-long event slash, I don't know what we'd call it, entity. Initially it was created to remember victims of violence and murder and suicide in the transgender community, but it's also evolved worldwide into an education and awareness type of thing. A couple of years ago, I decided to organize the very first trans event in front of the provincial government buildings, and to kind of just raise awareness. And I thought the time was right to take the show on the road. I'm kind of well known as the trans guru, shall we say, in Newfoundland, because I've been here for 6 years. I've done a lot of education and outreach. Not necessarily because I like doing it, but because I know it helps educate people and make people around me feel comfortable with me. And I've received a lot of emails from people all over the province with questions. And when I got wind of a controversial article that had been submitted to the Nor'Wester, I believe it was called, which coincided with the announcement by Darren King of amending the Human Rights Act to include gender identity and gender expression, something I and others have been fighting for so long. I felt the time was perfect to take a trip across the island and drop into several towns, not necessarily to confront anyone, but to just do that education and outreach work. People are afraid of the unknown, making people feel comfortable with me and recognizing that, sure, trans issues are fairly rare, and there's not a lot of people that are out about doing this, especially in Newfoundland, but at the same time, I've been fighting for 7 years to let people know I'm just a human being like anyone else.
You've just come to Grand Falls, Windsor from an event in Springdale. Tell us how that went.
I was extremely pleased with the reception we got, first of all, from the City Council in the town of Springdale. I wrote them with very little notice, saying I would like to come and do an event in your town. And they said, we'd love to have you. You can have access to our hall for free. And anything you need, you tell us. Unfortunately, the only thing they couldn't do was provide us a council member, but it was last minute. And there was very little time to do the outreach to let people know this event was happening. And we were thrilled to see probably 8, 9 people walk through the door. I knew up in advance that one guidance counselor from one of the high schools there was going to come. But I was pleasantly surprised to see, I think, 3 or 4 people from the education system there, all who have worked with LGBT students. There were parents and friends of LGBT people, and there were just some curious people. I think ultimately myself and my amazing team, my entourage, if you will, we presented a trans man, a trans woman, and a trans ally, and we did a mixture of Trans 101, as well as telling some personal stories. And we did do due diligence on the Trans Day of Remembrance stuff, but it was a real education outreach. I'd like to think we left leaving good impressions. They all said, we'd love to have you all come back, and as did Gander earlier in the day. Had a meeting with the councillor there who said, I want you to come in and meet the whole council. So it's nice to know that, everyone's entitled to make statements and write the newspaper, what's socially acceptable, what's morally acceptable. I guess my biggest concern is there's a fine line between opinion and false fact, and there's also a difference between opinion and hate and discrimination. And this pastor probably has very limited information about what transgender issues are, and has probably never met a transgender person. I'm disappointed the pastor didn't come out and take advantage of the opportunity to meet me and say, you know what, if I sit down and have coffee with Jennifer for 20 minutes, that pastor might walk away saying, you know, Jennifer's a pretty cool person.
How do you find attitudes, or are attitudes changing, if you say, in the past 7 years since you've been in Newfoundland?
I would say, ironically enough, individuals are generally fine with this. If they aren't telling me to my face. It's the systemic type of challenge, the discrimination. It's going through several job interviews and being always given an excuse why they hired someone else. And it's dealing with government policies that haven't caught up with the times, especially healthcare. Our healthcare policies here in this province for transgender health are probably 40 years out of date. And it's time to step up to the plate.
What does it do to your cause when articles are made public or published like the one in the newspaper in Springdale last week?
I think if you asked me this question 5 to 10 years ago, I would have said it's a serious concern. But I think the pendulum has swung. There seems to be a lot of outcry and objection, and people with those types of opinions are now in the significant minority. And the outcry and the outreach, I see it as a positive opportunity. Okay, I've done a lot of work in St. John's. Maybe it's time to go to Springdale. And someone said, Jennifer, why don't you come to Grand Falls? There's a lot of trans people here. But they're probably too afraid to actually book something like this on their own. So it's like, and that's why I'm here.
Jennifer, thanks so much for this.
Thank you so much for coming out.
That's Jennifer McCreath, an organizer of the Transgender Day of Remembrance in Grand Falls, Windsor.